It's 12. And is there any public comment?
There are no public comments as of now.
All right.
Closed for public comment.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
We're closed for public comment.
Okay, fine. All right. So there is no public comment. Then what I will do is start with an update of issues that I was charged with at the last commission meeting with respect to finding out what are the concerns with finance and when would the artist be paid. And there was an issue about grants making, which is still not known, but I'll just give you a little bit more detail about that. And we have a memo from Director Crumbo here that you all have. So if you have specific questions about that, we can talk a little bit. But let me let you know that I talked to Director Crumbo on that Thursday after the commission meeting. And we talked about a lot of things which are in this memo. We talked about when artists would be paid, and at that point it was still unknown because they were still trying to develop a list of all of the known artists and the actual amounts so that they could be paid along with all of the other organizations. So that was unknown. All of that has been resolved to a certain extent. If there's any glitches or any things that's outstanding, I'll ask legal to talk a little bit about that since they're sending out the letters, and I'll talk about the date in just a minute. The issue of books and the control of books continues to be an issue. I also got some communication from Director Crumbo. I believe it was on the 1st or the 2nd of April. And this deals with a grant from the Tennessee Arts Commission that said that grant had been canceled moving forward.
The MCI or the ABC or both?
I don't remember, and let me pull it. Do you remember which one?
I want to say it was ABC.
ABC. But not the MCI.
Yes. Yeah. And that will probably come up, I think, because I sent it on over to the chair for consideration at the full meeting, since that was something that came up. What you have in the memo is a lot of information that they're working on at finance on an ongoing basis. There's still a lot of unknowns, including the last page of what the additional projected expenses are, as well as budget availability. This is through April the 8th, 2024. I just talked to Director Crumbo, and he says he's going to be doing weekly updates for us on where things are. So this information on that last page is subject to go up or down, depending on what they find out and what they know specifically. I have questions relative to where we have contractors serving in staff roles, because that's still unknown, and I will be sending that to him. So if you all have questions that you want to get answered, if you can get those to me by Friday noon, I'm going to send those to him so that he can answer those. So we can have those for the next meeting, because I don't know where that is. And some of the contractor issues that we talked about yesterday may or may not stand in terms of moving forward as to what they're doing, how they're doing it, and those kind of things. And so we'll understand that as well, because I think it's important. And what I said to him, if it could be stop any activities until we could determine what it looked like going forward. And he said that's what they were doing. So I said. The other thing is Chris and Sydney are working with him, and any meetings moving forward that I have will include Chris and or Sydney, depending on what is going on, so that we have a source of information inside the organization, not just on the Board of Commissioners, so that that's something, and it'll depend on what it is. They're going to be providing a list and tracking all of the payments. And by the way, the payments are set to go out on the letter that advises Thrive artists about payments are set to go out tomorrow. Or is it today? Tomorrow?
I'm hoping to get them in the envelopes today. They will likely be in the mail tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
Truthfully, it's a bit of a complex process merging the information with the letters. And so we're working through that right now. The letters are completed, and there is a set plan and a set timeline for them to be in their envelopes in the mail by tomorrow.
Okay. Now, the letters are coming from legal. Finance has already signed off and determined that what the payments are as they know it. And then in there, there's a way for any artists or organizations to come back with any errors or things that they say may be there. So, and that's going to legal. And that's so that everything is not done out of finance. It really is a checks and balance kind of a situation. Authorization versus final signature and letters going out. And then finance, I'm told, will then issue checks. Is that my understanding?
There will be two options in the letter.
Okay.
One will be ACH, if that's the method that the artist originally received the payment at. We will use that banking information. If the artist prefers to have a check and they need a new mailing address, there's a spot for the artist to communicate that back to me. And then if there are issues with either of those payment options, there's communication in the letter for the artist to contact me, and we'll work through those on an individual basis.
Okay. So it's issue payment. Let me stop talking about checks. It's like Xerox. Let me start talking about issue payment. So, and the options. So, and somewhere along the way, the date I was given was no later than the 15th of the month, which is Monday, I believe, tax day. Yeah. So, and what is continuing is an ongoing review of payments and issues. Staff is working with finance to identify these outstanding payments as they know them and provide those to finance. And then that will take care of trying to figure this out. And we're building this building as we walk into it. So in some places it might have a roof, in some places it might not have a roof, but we should find this out as it's ongoing. So, and then the final issue is the budget fiscal year 2025. It's contingent upon what they find out about fiscal year 24 and what those numbers look like and how that works. Grants committee is working on grants making process, and they're working on a process with which I'm going to ask grants making to provide to us at some point so that it becomes part of the process and oversight issues that we'll know about, so we can sort of be checks and balances there. So if there's, and I know that Commissioner Jester is chairing that, but not necessarily to get a report, but just to ask you all that once you all have another meeting and you just provide it over to us as a measure, including the full body, so we can look at it as well. Okay. Are there any questions about the Finance Committee meeting? Yes.
I had a question about the process of it, like the internal things that have been frozen for the commission. I know I heard that like several contracts with artists, like internal projects, have been kind of frozen. That, you know, subscriptions, kind of office type stuff, project management software, things like that have been frozen. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's what I've been told. And then the contracts, like the Arthur Avenue and two others, I think have been frozen. So I wondered if there was any talk about that or update. I know that they're trying to catch up and trying to do stuff, but just so that the staff can continue to advance these projects with these artists and then their day-to-day work.
Okay. If you'll give me the names of those two contracts, because my role was really to thrive in the grants making process. And I sort of tried to keep it that way so we could get through that, at least get an answer, and we have answers for at least one of those, yes.
Tomorrow in public art, you'll be there tomorrow. So I assume we'll talk about some of these because I'm concerned that those projects are frozen because those are actually out of percent funds, not operating funds. So I have questions about that for tomorrow. And then to second what Commissioner Heather just said, I too have gotten calls from the staff about just day-to-day operations, subscriptions, water, like basic supplies, things like that, that they didn't realize their cards or their way to do procurement, I guess, had been frozen until after the fact. And so that's been, I think, a concern internally.
I'll put that on the list as another thing. Don't call.
So I'll speak on the staff part. As far as I know, the credit card holders were unable right now to purchase water or anything like for the office as of right now. If we do, I believe there's a process in which Chris has to go. So we really need to make sure, like, we're trying to make sure, like, do we need that water? Do we need that coffee? Can we just bring it from home? Just little things like that. I know for sure, like, most of us are bringing water from home or coffee from home. So I'm not really sure about the other items, but I know, like, that is, like, a thing that we are on a don't order anything. So I know we're not having any events. I typically order the food. So we're currently not having anything and making sure that we're not ordering food or anything like that.
Okay. What I will do then, I will ask Director Crumbo about day-to-day operations and what process he'd like to see in place, since they basically have taken over our books. That's really what's happened. So I'll ask him for that and ask him to clarify that role with Chris and myself for oversight, so that, and then bring it back to the commissioners about what that looks like. Again, our role is to put a process in place to prevent any kind of issues or problems from occurring. So to do that, we'll need to know what it, even if it's interim. Yes, sir.
Just to add to your conversation with Kevin Crumbo, I've heard at least one instance where a staff member was using their own money to help keep an operation moving forward, and that seems wholly inappropriate to me. Not that they should be in trouble for that at all, but they shouldn't be having to do that, and they should be reimbursed for it if it's happened.
Then let me put that on there, because if people are using the funds, there should be a reimbursement process. Is there a reimbursement process for staff on anything, or no?
Yes, so if staff were to purchase something, we bring a receipt, and then that receipt's turned into the finance director, and then there's a process that the finance director goes through for that.
Okay. And that would be Chris?
Yes, that would be
Okay,
Chris.
good deal.
But what happened was something that usually would have been taken care of with a
Credit.
card.
I
Yeah.
got it.
So.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions or concerns? Yes.
The memo, this is operating only, correct? Just to be real clear. Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want
Thanks.
and then on the payments going out to the artists, this is 50% of the final balance to Thrive Artist and to organizational, right?
Yes. Thrive is prioritized right now as far as getting those letters out the door and getting that communication with the individuals. We will be going through a very similar process with the operational grants as soon as the Thrive letters are out the door. So just order of operations, basically.
Thank you.
Do you have any kind of timeline for that?
I've got a draft of the letter to the arts organization, the operational grants. The only thing is communication with legal, finance, and art staff as far as if a additional spend plan or a grant spend plan would be needed. And that's where that's at. Once that's decided, then the letter process will take place to the op grant recipients. Yep. Yeah, and legal is very well aware of the pressures that the commission is facing, and we're diligently working to take those off of y'all.
Tessa, let me just ask you a question, because if calls come in to any of us, we need to refer them to you from artists or anybody else?
Yeah, regarding the letters that are going out,
Yes.
I am the primary point of contact
Okay.
for any questions.
So I think we just need to put everything, we hate to do this, back to you.
That's
It
what I
makes
get
it-
paid for. That's what I'm
good.
here for.
We're glad to hear that, because it's simpler if we do that rather than trying to piecemeal something together. And that way the tracking, I think, is easier.
Yeah, and I would ask the commission to please refer them to me, just that way there is consistent communication. If there are any issues, there is not any degradation of communication of what's going to the artists. And, this is all about getting them the money in hand as streamlined as possible. So,
Thank you.
On the avoiding operating deficit, the unknown commitments to artists and arts organizations, are we still digging for that? I assume that that's an unknown right now. Still,
Yes.
okay.
And if there's questions you have around that, just let me know that, because I'm going to send those all over to Director Crumbo and say, what is unknown, and the other issue is which consultants are doing staff functions, because that's something that we've heard, And what does that look like in terms of dollars and cents, so that we know what the real picture of the landscape is. So, okay. All right.
Can I ask one more clarifying question? When you were talking earlier about the, because there's a distinction, right, between the external consultants, but then there was also contractors that were serving as employees, and so that's what's being resolved. Is that still in play? Yeah.
That is still unknown, and that's why I'm going to ask a question. What do we know about persons working in those roles, and what has happened or not happened? Are they still performing duties? If not, what does that look like? So, I mean, I'm looking to try to get a landscape picture, because at some point, if staff is not in place to do the work, that's another issue. That's broader than just, and if they're not doing the work, then that's what that means. So some things can't happen. Just like credit cards for internal issues, there seems to be a lot of gaps. That's my assessment of what I'm seeing in terms of what people are required to do, need to do, and what the Arts Commission must do as part of its charter. Okay. Any more issues on finance?
And the timeline for fiscal year 25, it looks like that's still just kind of an unknown until all this is done. Okay.
And some of them may go to other committees, such as Public Arts. You all may come out with some issues. Grants making may come out with issues that we need to then move over to finance as well. It's not just oversight, it's all committees work, and then the full commission might even have issues. So. Anything else? Thank you. This is like looking for nuggets in the dirt, and they're not shining. Okay. But we'll continue to trudge forward. We have, what I'd like to say is thank finance and legal for letting me sort of ask them every day, but when are you going to get people paid? And coming up with some answers that I think are necessary for us to move forward, both as a committee and as a commission. So we're moving. I think legal has given us an update, but is there any HR updates that we need to know about?
Legal does not have any HR
Okay.
updates.
Okay.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
I mean, that lends itself to the question of leadership with the staff right now, whether temporary or permanent. I mean, is there a plan? Do we know if Director Singh is going to respond to the HR findings? Anything on that issue?
Well, the HR findings, you weren't at the last commission, is on hold until they can determine whether he is.
Right. That was the question, I guess.
Whether he is interim or whether he is,
Got it.
if he's continuing to be on leave, he cannot.
So that question's not been answered yet?
No,
Got
and
it.
we don't think it will be answered, or at least I don't think so. I'm not sure. That's why I was asking if there's an update.
Sure.
So, and I don't think there is any, so, okay.
Do we feel that the staff has appropriate leadership for the day-to-day right at the moment? And if not, what can we do?
The answer is no,
Okay.
because I've talked to enough staff and heard the issues. The answer is no. We have staff who are filling some of the gaps.
Yes.
But yet again, it's gaps being filled, and we need to talk about that and sort of deal with that. I think the chair was to meet with HR based on our last commission meeting. Is that, you made the motion, I believe. Is that clear? Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we're waiting to see where that comes out and what that means, and that might be at the next commission meeting, which is next week.
Yes. Very good.
Thank you for raising those, though, because I think it's all relevant to raise all of the issues in this committee, because it puts us on task for what the tasks are that we need to look at. Is HR process in place? Is there a leader in place? Is the leader permanent? Is it interim? Whatever. All of those are relevant issues, and then that doesn't have anything to do with the external issues, the complaints or other issues and things of that. Just what do we need to do? And when do we need to do it is really the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think that answered my question, just looking at the second to last paragraph. And it's my understanding with the executive director, per this memo, still remaining absent, no interim director appointed, there is a question of who can sign some contracts. So I'd like to get some answers on that next Thursday as well.
Legal and public art staff and procurement met earlier this week to discuss that. There are a few outstanding questions that essentially need a yes or no answer, and we are hoping to have those resolved by the end of this week.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me just follow. Are we looking at some delegated authority on an interim basis?
So the legal question is, traditionally the executive director signs the public art contracts. Obviously, the executive director is not available to do that currently. And so do these contracts under the code need signature from the arts executive director? It does not explicitly say it is needed. And then there's extraordinary circumstance where, Director Crumbo sent out his memo where finance has essentially helped taken over the financial matters of arts and is overseeing any financial allocations made by arts. And so the question then becomes, given the extraordinary circumstance, if the finance director says the money can go out the door and legal says the contracts are legally sufficient, can those move forward with just those two signatures? And so there are two questions related to that need just clear yes or no answers to finalize that decision.
Thank you. I think that, again, I just want to make the delegation between percent funds and operating.
And Commissioner, that was discussed, and it was explained that this percent funds sits in its own house, and it's walled off from other issues going on financially. So that is a consideration.
Let me sort of roll in on the budget process itself, because I asked about what does that look like, and this is Metro budget process, because I got a series of documents for the process itself with timelines, and I said when are things due, and who is responsible for getting them. So they're looking for staff to provide those at some point. I said, well, what's the date? And they said the end of this month. For things to start flowing in. I said, oh, they are talking with staff, two staff members, Chris and Sydney in particular, to make sure that that's moving forward. So we're set to meet with finance at some point within the next week or so as well. And it'll be the three of us in a meeting together to sort on some of that once they get some of the questions answered on some of the other things. So didn't know I was doing budgets this year.
So you mean internally how each year, I think it's, if my memory serves, which may not, each department submits their own budget. And so and it would make sense that should be due by now. And then each department then is, so it's the same as it has been in previous years.
It's the same as it had been. I think it's all budgets are due to the mayor by the 15th. That's why activities at the Arts Commission is yesterday's. And that's why they're looking to do that as soon as possible. Okay? So, we will have fun. And I think, again, any other questions on this, get these to me. Just send me the questions. I will get them to Director Crumbo and hopefully have some answers between now and the commission meeting, because I'll just to supplement anything that we get between now and next week for the commission meeting. And I'll share with you kind of a written document that I'll send to the chair. So, okay. All right. So, for the good of the order, any more questions on any of the items, finance, legal, or HR, that you all can think about before we move on to other issues and questions for us as we look at some process issues and try to look at some dates, I hope. No? No? Okay. The next item was really for us to look at the questions and answers is the committee work we need to do for oversight. I sort of had Commissioner Nefflin agreed to look at the bylaws and look at that, to talk about that process. If there's HR issues that we need to look at, what does that look at? And that's standard HR outside of any other issues that are atypical or complaints or those things. But what is it? And I'm not sure I know enough about it to make any kind of informed kind of issue. So I'll be talking with staff about what does that look like. And after next week's meeting, probably talking with the chair to see if I can just go to HR and just figure out what goes on. I would talk to staff about what happens if. It's like procurement. What happens if? So there's finance issues and other things. I think the legal issues are pretty clear because staff will contact legal for issues if they come up. So I think that is pretty a standard issue. We just need to probably put it into some process and make sure we work on that. So bylaws, I know that's good reading for nighttime.
So I did review the bylaws, and my template was comparing them with the enabling ordinance. And I think overall the bylaws are fine. We can nitpick some things, and as I make a second pass, I will nitpick some things, but that's just nitpicky things. The two issues that I think we do need to discuss with respect to the bylaws is over in Article 3, they're not really numbered, but under the subheading employ all staff necessary, and then subparagraph B, that paragraph delegates to the executive director the responsibility for the employment, supervision, removal of all professional staff. And I think as a result of what's happened over the last few months, and questions that I've heard raised by the public, that provision on its face would limit what the commission could do to respond to employment issues or staff issues, and there's no backstop, at least in the bylaws. I think you can read the enabling ordinance to say that there's broad enough powers in the enabling ordinance for us to deal with that. And this could be one of those extraordinary circumstances. But going forward, I think we should look to, if not claw back some of that delegation, at least provide a backstop for it if we ever hit this matter again. The second issue that I saw was with respect to the procurement issues, and as I was going through trying to understand how the procurement issue works in the context of Thrive, et cetera, it was my understanding that the subparagraph A of the section I was talking about may deal with that. I think we should revisit that issue at some point in light of the enabling ordinance, and to make sure that that is being done correctly, whether it's reflected correctly in our bylaws, and then operationally whether it's being done correctly. And the third issue that I saw, and this is coming up with the recent resolution at council about adding some phrase to the enabling ordinance to say that we shall distribute the funds equitably. If they're going to put that in the enabling ordinance, someone's going to have to define that, and whether that's the council or whether this body is going to have to define what we think equitable distribution of these funds is. So that's what I see immediately.
So looking at it, one is staff, the staff issue, removal, and what that means and what we might need to do there. what we might need to do there in terms of staff removals.
Yeah,
And
well-
it's professional staff.
Yeah. What authority the commission has to deal with staff issues, professional
Okay.
staff?
And I'm going to look at what's typically going on throughout Metro.
Sure.
So, and especially boards and commissions, because I'm not clear.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of a broad, so I'll look into that and then look into this, and we can marry them or
Yeah.
divorce them or whatever we have to do. And then procurement, does that relate to Thrive?
That's my understanding of the
Okay.
process, yes.
Okay. And then the definition of what is equitable.
Yes.
Okay.
If that resolution passes, we're going to have to think about that.
Okay, and then put into place a process that will get us there,
Sure.
subject to review.
Yes.
Okay. And when is that on the calendar? Do we know when that is on the calendar
I think
for?
it's August 16th. That's the date that's stuck in my head.
Okay.
Do you mean the council legislation?
Yes.
I think it's on second reading
Okay.
next week,
Okay, so it's on the second reading.
April 16th,
What did I say?
August. So it requires 3 readings. Yeah.
I'm trying to get to, the end of the year.
Okay, so we got second reading. That's coming up next week. Okay, so we'll know something so we can look and see what that means for us moving forward. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question, Commissioner Neflin, about when you were just looking at the bylaws and comparing them to the, I like that word, enabling ordinance. And I've always just wondered this. This is, but do you see any need for us to look at the way the bylaws describe awarding funds, which doesn't, is kind of a previous model, or doesn't really account for kind of what we're trying to do in terms of supporting individual artists. I don't know if you, is that a deal or not?
You're talking about Article 3, that first paragraph.
Yes,
award funds.
award funds.
The way that section of our bylaws is written is consistent with the enabling ordinance, as I interpret it. And so the question I raised is this procurement, is the way we're actually doing it consistent with the ordinance?
Commissioner Watts. So this is something we're going to take up in Grants Committee, but it is my understanding that the way that Thrive operates now is not in compliance with the operating ordinance or our bylaws. And so we're going to be looking at a way to, I want to be pretty general, but a way to maintain what's been done in a way that is inside the operating ordinance and our bylaws. So that's something we are taking up in Grants Committee. And just to be clear for the public, we're looking for a way to do this and maintain what we have and do it legally, not to change things or abolish things, but to do this in a way that cannot be called into question.
Did that answer?
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Pictures are coming together. So that means we've got some work to do and some issues to look at. So,
Much work to do.
all right.
One question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner Neflin, on the staff piece, you said professional staff. That does not include the executive director, correct? Or does it?
That's the role of the executive.
Yeah, right. Okay, I just wanted to be so.
I'm
That's
sorry.
the role of the executive director, is to oversee the staff.
Correct.
And then the commission oversees the executive.
Correct. And what I was suggesting is, because of the current circumstances, we may need to rethink that one and possibly claw back some of that delegated authority.
Totally understand. Thank you.
I'll bring in information about what's going on generally from HR about what happens with other boards and commissions and how they deal with that function, so that we'll, at some point, consistency across boards might help us, and maybe not. We don't know. So, all right. Yes, sir.
Something that Commissioner Watts mentioned yesterday, I just want to make sure we talk about this in case you weren't thinking about it, but I think that Chair of Grants, we should recommend to the general commission that they make a motion to add the grants chair to the executive committee. So we have the chair of each of our committees on the executive committee.
I think that is important so that we're able to function and move on a lot of these issues absent leadership. And then when leadership is finally settled in, whatever that looks like, that we have that as well. So, okay. Thank you.
Do we need to make a motion to recommend that or just talk about it in the general commission meeting? I'm not sure if that matters or not.
I think we can just, my sense is we can talk about it in the general meeting unless we need to have a motion for something.
That would just be part of your general report, I think.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe the chair can appoint to the executive committee. Is that right?
Yeah, so the bylaws say the chair of the commission may appoint an additional commissioner as a sixth voting member of the executive committee if circumstances warrant such an appointment. So if the discussion is appointing the chair of the grants committee, that could serve as the sixth additional voting member to the executive committee.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Nefflin, for looking into that. So that means we've got some charges to make. One is to look at the HR process as we know it, working with staff and with HR as it relates to our bylaws as well, to determine what we should put into place on that. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, fine. All right. Then I will make that part of our report to the full board. On finance, the other issue we're looking at is follow-up on finance so we can get an updated report with any questions by the next commission meeting. So if you have them, just send them to me. You all have my email address, so just send them on over and I'll put it together. And then I'm going to send something out. I'll copy all of you on it just to make sure as I send it to Director Crumbo. So if something's missed, you have the opportunity to say, but this was another question. So just because these are just questions, they're not delivered. They're just questions and issues and things. I don't think we have a problem, do we? Mm-mm. Yes, no?
As long as you're not deliberating towards decisions outside.
No, these are just
outside
questions.
of the public business.
No, these are just questions to the finance director to provide back information to us.
Yes.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah, one-way communication, not two-way communication.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And Commissioner Watts, my intent, of course, subject to your approval, was after we get through the bylaws issues, we agree on what the bylaws should be, revisions, then we can start looking at each committee and make sure they're conforming with the bylaws and with the enabling ordinances.
And that sounds great because I think that's it. Because I think other committees are what we need to start focusing on as well. The grants committee, Commissioner Jester's working on things that'll come back in to the full body as well as to this group so we can look at those and do checks and balances and have some deliberative process in the public view on those issues. And so that's the other piece of what we need is grants. And I know they're meeting next week. Public Arts is doing stuff. They're having a meeting tomorrow. So just sort of making sure we know what is it there. So as we get copies of minutes and issues from other committees, I'm asking that you all look at those and bring those back to our next meeting so that we can then start delving into what do we know as process? What do we know as question marks about process? And what do we have as recommendations for any process enhancements or approval of what's in place, whatever that is. So moving forward, we can do that. Think about this. I'm not asking for a date today, but think about as we move through this, when do we think we're going to be finished with our work, whatever that means? And it looks like our work is going probably into the summer. And what does that look like going forward? Yes, sir.
That may have been the August date I was thinking about.
That sounds about like it. That's about 6 months. Yeah. It's 8 actually. We came into February. We came into existence, I believe, in February. Is that right, Commissioner Lefkowitz? So it's right around 7 months at some point. So that sounds like a good deal. All right.
Can I chime in about the CARE committee too, just to update?
Please.
Because Commissioner Love is appointing a new chair of CARE because of Commissioner Perez's resignation. And so that is underway. And staff is also aware. So we will not have a meeting this month, but will in May with a new chair of CARE. So that will be a good, I wanted to make sure I said that.
And I believe at the last meeting I shared the current chart for staffing. And we need to continually look at that and see what that looks like as we move through any things, because that really is how we're being guided by committee work and other things as well. So we just need to look to see what that needs to look like moving forward.
Is that an organizational chart?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you send that to me if you have
Yes,
it? Because
I
I
will
can
do.
put it in our drive, which I don't know if everyone has had a chance to look at. It's very impressive. But I can add that. Anything you want me to add to the drive, I can.
All right, good deal. So, you can add some of these memos to the drive and any kind of things we're getting as we get updates. 'Cause
I add everything to
wonderful,
the drive. Mhm.
wonderful. I'm not that astute on the drive, so.
Can I just ask one clarifying point too? Maybe this is going back to the previous, I hope this is not going back to the previous agenda item, but is that idea to that Commissioner Love's talking to HR and that will be kind of sorted, but that we can have some kind of resolution for the staff at the commission meeting, do you think, in terms of leadership?
That I'm not sure of, because that dealt with the FMLA issues and other things. That was real specific to the current executive director, and I'm not ask any questions. So, but I think that's something that we think we might have, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
One of the problems is whether or not we get information on the one complaint.
Can you clarify what you're referring to?
The Luther Wright report. He's not responded. The current director, Singh, has not responded to that, and because he is, at least my last understanding was on continuing FMLA. He could not respond based on our last commission meeting.
Yeah. I would think that at the general meeting, we need to have conversation about all of that in light of the fact that we might not get a response.
We need to just deal with it in the light of what do we know, what do we have, what we don't have, and then what will we do as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. All right. And that really is also in this memo about leadership in that last paragraph on the budget issue as well. So, okay. Any other questions or comments that we need to deal with on moving forward, process-wise? Okay. Well, our next steps are to get information about the HR process as it currently stands as it relates to the bylaws and what that looks like. The grants management issue, what is going to be recommended and what will be moving forward, and what does that do, and then reviewing that again to make sure that there are no problems or issues with that. All right. And then the org chart itself is something that deals with leadership, so we'll need to probably bring that up and continue to put that in the forefront, because actually leadership is a question of the org chart itself, and if it continues to be vacant, it's under that context that we need to look at the process for what do we do. Is it interim? If it's not interim, what is it? How will it work? Is it temporary, permanent, whatever? But those are all the factors that need to look at based on the information that we have. Any comments, anything on anything that's moving forward that we need to consider?
Do we have assignments for next time?
I'm going to look at the HR reports and those things. If there's anything else that you see that comes out of any of, other than getting me the questions and those kind, we'll review those And I hope to get those in enough time that it's not right away. I think we need to look at next meeting. And we probably need to look at a schedule that gets us moving, because there's a lot of things that depends on. Somewhere in most of the comment about the oversight committee and what we come up with will be factors involved in where we go from here.
Very good.
So that's it. So the question is, anything that pops up as a question or an issue, if you want it on the agenda, I will tend to have Vivian probably come out to you all just about a week before to see if there's any issues we need to have. If we have information, I'll make sure that Vivian sends that out to you for you all to review, so we have a little bit more time. And again, please continue to review what you have in front of you, because every once in a while you get and you go, I didn't understand. That's another question, okay? And then the final thing is that all of this with respect to the budget numbers as we see, they're known and unknown. And that an update will be coming on an ongoing basis. And so we need to recognize that these are, especially those in the red, are unknown. Some of those additional projected expenses are also unknown, even though they're not tagged. So we just need to find out what they are so that the spreadsheet is accurate. Yes.
In as much as everything sort of needs to come up underneath the Budget and Oversight Committee at this point, we're meeting as the Grants Committee on the 15th, which would probably give me enough time to be prepared to speak at the commission meeting on the 18th. But should I wait until our next meeting to bring those things up so Oversight can review first? Or
No.
Okay.
I don't think so, unless somebody disagrees with me. No.
Okay.
I think we need to keep it moving.
I agree. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
No.
going out of order.
We're sort of, our oversight role touches everything, and commission meetings come up, which is where final decisions can be made. We can make recommendations, but final decisions are made, and every committee should function and operate to make final decisions to that. But on some levels, when you get into the process itself and develop some things, I think we want to see and look at those, and legal will look at it, and we'll look at it and make some suggestions to see what looks good. So, okay. So, with
Commissioner,
that, yes.
If I ask one, so we said that there's a lot of unknowns, but this is what is known as of this date, subject to change.
Subject to change.
Got it.
Exactly.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
So any of questions, since I only saw this right before we came in, so I do have questions. So just email those to you by Friday noon, especially for these numbers here.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
April 18th, next Thursday.
I'll be making the report then. I'm going to try to do a written report, so that way you will get it as you come in. So if there's something missing, I would hopefully appreciate that you all would just sort of add some things in. Okay. And today is the 10th. So when do we want to meet again? Do we want to meet in a month?
I would say,
Or-
looking
Yes,
looking at the calendar, we can meet the Wednesday before a public art meeting next month, which would be the 8th of May. But the calendar is real tight, so either the 6th, 7th, or 8th would be ideal. Specifically making sure that I get a room and time enough, being that I'll probably be the only staffer here necessarily that's necessary for the meeting.
Okay.
I'm good for any one of those.
As am I.
6 and 7 work the best for me.
6 and 7 work the best for you. What about you, Commissioner Lefkovich?
Anything wide open.
Okay. I have one item which dropped off the calendar this morning, but it's coming back on the calendar in May. I will be in town. It's just a matter of moving from point A to point B. We were doing Wednesdays. Do we want to do Tuesday, Commissioner Nefflin? Because I would like for you to be here since this is some of the issues.
You say Tuesday the 7th?
If everybody, because the rest of us are open.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Why don't we do the 7th? And do we want to do noon? We'll go back to a noon kind of. Noon?
Okay.
Yes. And I will work on an agenda for you earlier.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
At least by the 30th. The only reason being is I'm out of town for a few days the week before.
Understand.
So, but otherwise, I'll do that and sort of get you an agenda, okay? And then if there are agenda items that any of the commissioners would like on that next oversight, just drop a note to Vivian, and you can just copy me that says, add this to the agenda. So that way we can start sort of.
So typically what we do is if you all want to add something, send it to me and then I'll make the agenda and then therefore I'll send it to the chair and then she'll agree or not agree, scratch it, not scratch it.
Thank you for that process piece.
Yes.
That wasn't
Yes.
clear. Then send it to Vivian. She'll take care of the rest of it. Thank you. All right.
I wanted to say too that there is a oversight file in the drive, and there is that list of initial questions that I don't know, many of them may have been resolved, but I just want to point to that as a resource if anybody wants to go back and look at those questions. It's just a long list of the original questions when the committee was formed. And then the second thing is, Commissioner Watts, could you send me this electronically, the memo and the other items, or did you send them?
I
Okay,
can.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other issues that we need? Any other issues or any other concerns that need to come up at this point?
You did it.
Process can be pretty easy if we just deal with the process. Then it can deal with the problems later. And those are a bigger issue. Yes. Okay, good deal. All right. Is there any other business that we need to take care of? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. If not,
So moved.
there's no objections. We stand adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.